Random House Audiobooks presents M is for Malice by Sue Grafton. Read for you by Judy Kaye.
M is for Malice. Robert Dietz came back into my life on Wednesday, January 8th. I remember the date because it was Elvis Presley's birthday, and one of the local radio stations had announced it would spend the next 24 hours playing every song he'd ever sung. At 6 a.m., Heartbreak Hotel blared on my clock radio at top volume. I smacked the off button with the flat of my hand and rolled out of bed as usual. I pulled on my sweats in preparation for my morning run. I brushed my teeth, splashed water on my face, and trotted down the spiral stairs. I locked my front door behind me, moved out to the street where I did an obligatory stretch, leaning against the gatepost in front of my apartment. The day was destined to be a strange one, involving, as it did, a dreaded lunch date with Tasha Howard, one of my recently discovered first cousins. Running was the only way I could think of to quell my uneasiness. I headed for the bike path that parallels the beach. January. The holidays had left me feeling restless, and the advent of the new year generated one of those lengthy internal discussions about the meaning of life. I usually don't pay much attention to the passing of time, but that year, for some reason, I was taking a good, hard look at myself. Who was I, really, in the scheme of things? And what did it all add up to? For the record, I'm Kinsey Millhone, female, single, 35 years old, sole proprietor of Kinsey Millhone Investigations in the Southern California town of Santa Teresa. I was trained as a police officer and served a 2-year stint with the Santa Teresa Police Department before life intervened, which is another tale altogether and one I don't intend to tell, yet. For the last 10 years, I've made a living as a private investigator. Some days I see myself, nobly, I'll admit, battling against evil in the struggle for law and order. Other days I concede that the dark forces are gaining ground. I started my career investigating arson and wrongful death claims for California Fidelity Insurance. A year ago, my relationship with CFI came to an abrupt and ignominious halt, and I'm currently sharing space with the law firm of Kingman and Ives, taking on just about anything to make ends meet. I'm licensed, bonded, and fully insured. I have $25,000 in a savings account, which affords me the luxury of turning down any client who doesn't suit. I haven't refused a case yet, but I was strongly considering it. Tasha Howard, the aforementioned first cousin, had called to offer me work, though the details of the job hadn't been specified at that point. Tasha is an attorney who handles wills and estates, working for a law firm with offices in both San Francisco and Lompoc, which is an hour north of Santa Teresa. I gathered she divided her time just about equally between the two. I'm normally interested in employment, but in this case, the transaction was complicated by the fact that while Tasha and I aren't exactly estranged, we're certainly not close, and I suspected she was using business to ingratiate herself. As it happened, her first call came on the day after New Year's, which allowed me to sidestep by claiming I was still on vacation. When she called again, January 7th, she caught me off guard. I was at the office in the middle of a serious round of solitaire when the telephone rang. She said, "Hi, Kinsey. This is Tasha. I thought I'd try you again. Did I catch you at a bad time?" "This is fine," I said. I crossed my eyes and pretended I was gagging myself with a finger pointed down my throat. Of course she couldn't see that and probably took my fakey, warm tone of voice as gospel. She said, "What's your schedule like tomorrow? Can we get together for an hour? I have to be in Santa Teresa anyway, and we could meet for lunch." I could probably do that," I said with caution. In this world, lies can only take you so far before the truth catches up. What sort of work are we talking about? "I'd rather discuss it in person. Is 12 o'clock good for you? That sounds fine, I said. Perfect. I'll make reservations. A meal's at the beach. I'll see you there, she said, and with a click, she was gone. I put the phone down, set the ballpoint pen aside, and laid my little head down on my desk. What an idiot I was. Tasha must have known I didn't really want to see her, but I hadn't had the nerve to say so. She'd come to my rescue a couple of months before, and though I had repaid the money, I still felt I owed her. Maybe I'd listen to her politely before I turned her down. The morning of January 9th inevitably arrived, and I pounded along the bike path as if pursued by wild dogs. Having finished my run and my morning routine, I skipped the office altogether and hung around my place. I paid some bills, tidied up my desk, did a little laundry, and chatted briefly with my landlord, Henry Pitts, while I ate 3 of his freshly baked sticky buns. Not that I was nervous. I'd never actually laid eyes on Tasha, but I'd met her sister Liza the summer before last. As usual, when you're waiting for something unpleasant, the clock seems to leap forward in 10-minute increments. Next thing I knew, I was standing at my bathroom mirror applying makeup, for God's sake, while I emoted along with Elvis, who was singing It's Now or Never. Emil's wasn't far, all of 5 minutes on foot. With luck, I'd be hit by a truck as I was crossing the street. I slipped on my flats and clumped down the spiral staircase. Almost all of the tables at Emil's were occupied by the time I arrived. I spotted Tasha through one of the interior archways before she spotted me. She was seated in a small room off the main dining room. She was 3 years older than I and more substantial in her presentation. She wore a gray wool suit with a white silk shell showing in the deep V of the jacket. Her dark hair was streaked with blonde, pulled back with a sophisticated black chiffon bow sitting at the nape of her neck. She caught sight of me at that point, and I saw her expression quicken as she registered the similarities between us. Maybe all the Kinsey girl cousins shared the same features. I raised a hand in greeting and moved through the lunch crowd to her table. I took the seat across from hers, tucking my bag on the floor beneath my chair. "Hello, Tasha." For a moment, we did a mutual assessment. In high school biology, I'd studied Mendel's pink and white flowering peas, the crossbreeding of colors and the resultant pattern of offspring. This was the very principle at work. Up close, I could see that her eyes were dark where mine were hazel, and her nose looked like mine did before it was broken twice. Seeing her was like catching a glimpse of myself unexpectedly in a mirror, the image both strange and familiar. Me and not me. Tasha broke the silence. "This is creepy. Liza told me we looked alike, but I had no idea." "I guess there's no doubt we're related. What about the other cousins? Do they look like us?" "Variations on a theme. When Pam and I were growing up, we were often mistaken for one another." Pam was the sister between Tasha and Liza. I said, "Did Pam have her baby?" "Months ago. A girl. Pam named her Cornelia as a way of sucking up to Grand. I'm afraid most of us are guilty of trying to score points with her from time to time." Cornelia Straith LeGrand was my grandmother Kinsey's maiden name. Grand had been her nickname since babyhood. From what I'd been told, she ruled the family like a despot. She was generous with money, but only if you danced to her tune. My upbringing had been blue-collar, strictly lower middle class. Aunt Jin, who raised me from the age of 5, had worked as a clerk typist for California Fidelity Insurance, the company that eventually hired me. She managed on a modest salary, but we'd never had much. We'd always lived in mobile homes, trailers as they were known then, bastions of tiny space, which I still tend to prefer. At the same time, I recognized even then that other people thought trailers were tacky. Why, I can't say. Aunt Jin had taught me never to suck up to anyone. What she'd neglected to tell me was there were relatives worth sucking up to. Tasha steered away from the subject of family, shifting over to the task at hand. Let's get lunch out of the way, and then
Sample complete. Ready to continue?